Paterson's curse is probably a species that to a degree has declined a bit, surprisingly enough. It was a major weed around York Northern area, largely, but also largely in fruit areas, fruit growing places. It doesn't cope with grazing very well at all. You'll rarely see it in paddocks that are grazed. So it tends to be more common in horticultural sites where there is no mowing or there's no tilling of the soil, if that makes sense. It's a plant that's not readily eaten. It's got quite irritating hairs on the plant. It's quite a pretty plant if you've seen it in flower. It's got large bluey purple flowers. Is also one of the plants that you really, if you're a beekeeper, you don't want, because it does have some quite mean chemicals that go into the honey. It's a species that looks good, but has got lots of issues. So it's got really prickly hair, so cows and sheep don't like eating it. It does like areas which tend to be fairly disturbed, but it will get into natural bushland, but it does like a reasonable soil. So it's a species that you can, when it's growing and flowering, you can control with herbicides, or you can control it with grazing, with goats or whatever. They'll eat it and get rid of it if you've got a small property and you want to take it out from there. So you can crash graze it. It has relatively long-lived seeds, but not that long-lived. 4 or 5 years will take it out. And there has been a whole series of biological control organisms brought in to try and control it. However, it's a biennial where it normally grows, so it produces a rosette one year and the flowers the next year. However, in WA, it can quite happily grow as an annual. So most of the organisms that they brought in to control it grow in the rhizome or live in the rhizome and then attack it the next year. So, of course, they all died in summer. We've got a number of weevils that have been brought in that actually do control it quite efficiently. So it has declined probably as a major weed in many areas of the state, and it's probably now largely a weed of areas which aren't heavily grazed or aren't cultivated. And I guess for a lot of small holdings, that's probably what's happened as well, that they've become areas where you will get more of this species than you would get in row crop areas. You should control it probably when it's starting to flower, because again, that's when it's actively growing, and where you can, and also it's got the rosette, the big leaves, which you can put the herbicide on relatively readily, or you can grub it out before it seeds. So it's hard to pull out. You'd actually need to sort of dig it out because it has a pretty good root system, and you can't grab. If you just pull the top, it'll just come off and leave the plant behind. So you can rub it out, or you can use herbicides on it. There's a lot of information about this species because it's been a weed for such a long time that you can readily give landowners the correct sort of requirements to control it, when to control it, and what to do with it. Yes, because they'll have less hairs and they'll be less nasty. Don't seem to care. Goats, they just eat a lot. But having a prickly hair seems to be a major deterrent for sheep. Perhaps less so for cattle, but it's certainly one of the ways plants defend themselves against these animals eating them, is to have prickly hairs or things that just don't make them as nice to eat as the plant next to them. See them in late spring, they'll just be all the blue flowers are out. So you can still spray them when they've got flowers, but you don't want to do it much later than that because they'll be going off to their summer snooze.